Hi everyone, my name is Joe and I'm 15 years old. I am very sorry about one thing and I want to talk about it. I introduced my father to the world of the internet and it hurt him a lot. I don't even know if our lives can go back to being the same now. My father has been sad ever since my mother left, and I have to say, it's been hard for me too. I was 10 years old at the time and her leaving was a massive blow for both of us. I suffered and I didn't understand why she did it, and my father didn't want to tell me what happened. It must have hurt him to think about her. Soon I stopped missing my mom and tried to get my life back on track. But my father couldn't shake his feelings. He had problems at work, couldn't cope with household chores, and could barely take care of me. We got through it somehow though, and became stronger. But even after 5 years, my father still couldn't shake his sadness. I thought that he was spending too much time alone with his thoughts and that it wouldn't lead to anything good. So I figured out a way to cheer my dad up. I gave him my iPad and taught him how to use it. I also registered my father on some popular social networks and showed him the world of YouTube. It was my way of dealing with his sadness. With the help of social networks, I communicated with friends and met a lot of new people, and there was content on YouTube for every taste. I could always distract myself from bad thoughts by watching videos. So this could be good for my dad too. And it was. My father was changing. He had the pleasure of communicating with his friends that he had lost contact with. He liked to watch different documentaries on YouTube and other stuff. But soon my father began to behave strangely. You'll understand what I'm talking about in a sec. It all started slowly. First, I saw he had taped the camera on his laptop. I even made a joke about it, but Dad didn't want to laugh at it. He really thought the camera could be easily hacked and that someone could be watching him. Look, maybe it's true, but who cares? I understand that it makes sense to hack a computer of a politician or some movie star, but who needs to keep an eye on my father? For what reason? To learn the secret ingredient of his signature macaroni and cheese? That's ridiculous. It's more cheese, by the way. But that was his opinion, and I couldn't change his mind. From time to time, he surprised me with some facts about the internet. Mostly, they were pieces of some conspiracy theories that were being tossed around out there. I admit that it sounded interesting, but I never believed in any of them. But my father was really worried about the fact that he believed that the state conducts total surveillance on all of us and uses our gadgets to do this. One time, he even had me convinced. He wanted to prove to me that we were being bugged and suggested we do an experiment. He put the phone down on the table and suggested we talk about dogs and everything about dogs for a couple of minutes. We kept repeating the words dogs, leash, fodder. After a couple of minutes, my father opened Facebook, started swiping through his feed, and the first advertisement that appeared on the screen was a dog food ad. It was pretty amazing, and I didn't even know that was even possible. This was clear proof that my father was right. But I wasn't worried about it anyway, because it was just an ad, and it couldn't hurt. I think everything would have been fine, but all these scandals about information leaks from social networks in the public domain just proved that my dad was right. And every time, my father became more and more certain that we were being watched. New rules gradually appeared in our house. Dad blocked all the internet in the house so that I could only use it to study with his permission. Then we started putting our phones in a box so no one could overhear us. It was pretty inconvenient because I was communicating with my friends on the internet and Dad was depriving me of all this communication. The worst part was that I couldn't even argue with him. When I told my father that he was overreacting and worrying too much about it, he told me that I had already been brainwashed and that he was helping me. It was too much. It was like paranoia. His sense of caution had crossed all the lines. Soon he turned off the internet in the house and took my phone. Dad threw all the gadgets from our house into the trash. Now I didn't have my laptop or smartphone. Instead, Dad bought me an old push-button phone that didn't have internet. I mean, those things were popular like 20 years ago. And soon, his paranoia was transferred to other objects. Dad draped all the windows with heavy curtains so no one could see what was going on inside the house. Then he became suspicious of our neighbors. Sometimes he would look out the window and look at their house. He thought they might be watching him, so he decided to watch them back. He began to pick me up from school by himself so that he could ensure my safety, as he put it. It was just so stupid. Plus, he had to constantly take time off from work, and he had a lot of problems because of it. I knew my father needed help, but I didn't know who to turn to. I couldn't even Google what to do in this situation. Imagine what a horror I must have been living in during this time. But soon, there was a turning point in my story. I was at school, in class, and suddenly my father came to pick me up. He said he had something important to do, and we went to the principal's office. Dad said he wanted to pick up my papers from school because he got a new position at work and we were going to move. At that moment, I thought, wow, did my dad finally change his mind and would everything get better soon? But my optimism was short-lived. All the way home, I tried to ask my dad about it, but he wouldn't answer. We packed our stuff, and it was late at night when we put everything in the car and left our town. We drove on the highway for several hours and then turned onto a country road. After another hour, my dad said we had arrived. A very thick forest was around us. I looked around and saw an old little house. Then my father told me the truth. The job move was just a cover. Like Dad said, we'd been bugged for a while, and he started noticing that he was being followed by some people. So he decided that we needed to run where no one could reach us. Now these agents, as he called them, had to be on the wrong track because he lied about moving at work and at my school. And now we were at this little house my dad and grandfather used like 20 years ago when they were hunting. We were going to stay here for a while until Dad came up with another plan. At that moment, I realized it wasn't just paranoia. Dad had lost his mind, and there was nothing I could do about it. I was hundreds of miles from my home, and I had no idea how far we were from civilization. From that moment on, my life became unbearable. There was no comfort in the house at all. There was no electricity, heat, or water. It was just a wooden box that I had to spend my time in. I tried to convince my dad that we needed to go home and that I needed to go back to school, but he just wouldn't listen to me. He believed that I had been brainwashed and that I didn't notice the total surveillance by the state for us. Honestly, I thought about running away, but that seemed reckless. There was all this dense forest all around us, and I didn't even know which way to go. I could easily get lost in the woods and starve to death if the wild animals didn't eat me first. Besides, I was afraid of my father. Sometimes he muttered things to himself, and sometimes he laughed softly and was glad that he could deceive everyone. But soon I had a chance to break out of this crazy trap. One morning we heard the voice of a stranger. He asked if anyone was here. It was a forest ranger or something, and he was wondering why we were here. Of course, my father suspected a trap and even introduced himself by another name. Soon the forest ranger was about to leave, but I had to ask him for help in some way. I quickly wrote the word help on a piece of paper and handed it to him when we said goodbye. It was my only ticket home, and I hoped this man wouldn't leave me in a lurch. Suddenly, my father said that we had been compromised because the ranger could be a government agent, so we had to leave quickly. He started packing our things in a rush, and I tried to stall, hoping that help was on the way. Half an hour later, we were getting into the car, but I lied and said I forgot something and ran back into the house. My father started to get angry, but I locked myself in the house, and I heard him screaming and begging me to come out. But suddenly, I heard the sound of a siren. The police had finally arrived. I went out and started waving at them, and my father snapped and ran into the woods. I've never seen a man as scared as my father was then. Several policemen tried to chase him, but soon they returned and said they had lost him. I was rescued and taken to the nearest police station to sort things out. I didn't want to hurt my father, and I asked the police to take it easy on him. I told them that he didn't force me to do anything or bully me. He wasn't an evil father. He was just a man who needed help. A few days later, Dad was detained. It turned out he had developed a mental disorder. He had been depressed for a long time. His psyche was unstable, and he developed paranoia. I felt guilty about what had happened to him. I introduced him to the world of the internet, and I laughed at his theories instead of explaining everything. With this disease, my dad couldn't take care of me, so my distant relatives became my guardians. Dad is now undergoing treatment in a hospital, and I hope he will be all right. Now I have a computer and a phone again, But all this does not give me too much pleasure. I keep thinking about my father, who suffered because of all of this. And I blame myself for being so inattentive to the person I love. Thanks for watching my story to the end, guys. What do you think about it? Do you think my father was right about people spying on us? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to our channel to not miss more cool stories.